What if one act of kindness on Christmas Day could unravel a heartbreaking truth hidden in plain sight? When a small beggar offers a simple cake to Keanu Reeves, he uncovers a shocking reality that will leave you speechless. Stay with us, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity and bring tears to your eyes. Before we jump into this heartwarming and unforgettable story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories that will touch your heart and soul. Keanu Reeves, dressed simply in a charcoal jacket and scarf, strolled down a quiet street in New York City on Christmas morning. It was rare for him to have such solitude, and rarer still to find himself walking alone without the gaze of flashing cameras. Snow coated the sidewalks, muffling the usual clamor of the bustling city. He was on his way to visit an old bookstore, tucked into a corner of Brooklyn, a place he frequented when he saw it calm amid the chaos of fame. As Keanu turned a corner, he noticed the vibrant energy of a small Christmas market that had sprung up in the neighborhood. Rows of stalls decorated with twinkling lights and handmade garlands lined the square, vendors calling out to passers-by. A massive Christmas tree stood at the center, its ornaments shimmering in the soft glow of morning light. The air was fragrant with the scent of cinnamon, roasted chestnuts, and hot cocoa. Keanu's curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to take a brief detour through the market. His quiet demeanor allowed him to blend in with the crowd. Families bustled about, children tugging at their parents' hands to buy toys, and couples laughed as they sampled festive treats. It was a scene of warmth and simplicity, untouched by the burdens of wealth or fame. As Keanu wandered through the stalls, his attention was drawn to a small figure weaving through the throng. A young boy, perhaps no older than 10, moved gracefully between the crowd. He was dressed in a worn Santa hat and a patched red coat that hung loosely on his slight frame. In his hands was a small basket filled with homemade cakes, their simple wrappings tied with scraps of ribbon. "Fresh cakes! Freshly baked cakes!" the boy called out, his voice steady but tinged with a quiet desperation. His small frame seemed out of place among the towering adults and elaborate market displays. Keanu watched as the boy approached strangers with a polite smile, holding up his basket in offering. Most people passed him by with a quick shake of their heads or a distracted glance, too preoccupied with their own merriment. Something about the boy's determination tugged at Keanu's heart. He noticed the boy's hands trembling slightly from the cold, his breath visible in the icy air. Keanu stepped forward, kneeling slightly to meet the boy's gaze. "Hello there," Keanu said gently, his voice warm and inviting. The boy's eyes widened in surprise as he recognized the familiar face of the actor. For a moment he seemed unsure of what to say. "Would you like to buy a cake, sir?" the boy finally managed, holding up the basket with both hands. "It's carrot cake. My mom made them." Keanu smiled and reached into his pocket. "How much for one?" he asked. $2, the boy replied, his voice steady but his eyes full of hope. Keanu paused, then carefully took a cake from the basket. Its wrapping was simple, and it smelled faintly of cinnamon and nutmeg. He handed the boy a crisp $20 bill. "Keep the change," he said with a wink. The boy's face lit up with disbelief. "Thank you, sir," he exclaimed, his voice cracking with emotion. But before Keanu could stand, the boy hesitated. "Wait," he said, his voice quieter now. "Can I give you this one too? As a gift?" From the bottom of the basket the boy pulled out a slightly smaller cake, wrapped with a bit of red string. "My mom says it's good luck to share on Christmas," he added shyly. Keanu accepted the gift, his throat tightening as he looked into the boy's earnest eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Eli," the boy replied. "Well, Eli," Keanu said, standing and placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, "you've made my Christmas." As Keanu Reeves stood with Eli in the bustling market, the small boy's cheerful demeanor suddenly shifted. The happiness that had lit up his face moments ago vanished, replaced by visible apprehension. Keanu noticed Eli's hand clutching the basket of cakes more tightly, as a gruff, angry voice cut through the holiday cheer. "Rely!" The shout came from a man at the edge of the market, his tone sharp and unmistakably furious. The boy's entire frame stiffened, and his eyes darted around as if seeking an escape route. Keanu's smile faded, and a deep concern took its place. He instinctively stepped closer to Eli, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder as the crowd seemed to part for the source of the shouting. The man stormed toward them, his disheveled appearance and unsteady gait drawing attention from nearby shoppers. His clothes were ragged, his face hardened by years of hardship, and his voice was rough and cutting. "What are you doing here? Wasting time? You think you can sell cakes all day without checking in?" Eli shrank under the man's glare, his earlier confidence replaced by fear. I was just selling, sir," he stammered. The man grabbed Ellie's arm roughly, pulling him away from Keanu. "Selling, huh? Where's the money then?" he snarled, shaking Eli slightly. Keanu's protective instincts kicked in. "Hey, take it easy," he said firmly, stepping between Eli and the man. "There's no need to grab him like that." The man's bloodshot eyes turned to Keanu, narrowing as he realized who he was confronting. "Oh, look at this," he sneered. "A big-shot Hollywood star wants to play hero. Why don't you mind your own business?" Keanu remained calm but resolute. "This boy isn't just business," he replied evenly. "He's a person, and you're hurting him." The man tightened his grip on Eli's arm, his face twisting with disdain. "You don't know what it's like out here. This kid's got responsibilities. He owes me. So why don't you take your fancy coat and walk away?" Keanu's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm not walking away from this. If he owes you, we'll settle it another way, but you don't put your hands on a kid like that." The tension was palpable, drawing the attention of nearby market-goers. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that Keanu Reeves? What's happening?" The co-founder of the well-known social media platform Brunette. Eli glanced up at Keanu, his eyes filled with silent pleading. The man noticed this and yanked the boy harder. "You think you can save him?" he hissed. "You don't know anything about us." Before Keanu could respond, the man started dragging Eli away through the crowd. The boy stumbled, but managed to cast one last desperate look back at Keanu. As Keanu Reeves returned to the bustling Christmas market after the troubling encounter, his resolve deepened. The faint scent of mulled cider and roasted chestnuts hung in the air, mingling with the hum of conversations and holiday cheer. Yet, for Keanu, the festive atmosphere felt distant, a thin veil over a harsher reality. The limousine driver hesitated, as Keanu instructed him to park discreetly at the market's edge. His assistant, who had been furiously tapping away on her phone, glanced up in disbelief. "Keanu, the charity gala is in less than an hour. They're expecting you to give the opening speech," she reminded him, her voice tight with urgency. "This is an international event. You can't just—" Keanu raised a hand gently but firmly. "I understand. But there's a boy out there who needs help. Sometimes, the right thing isn't on the schedule." His assistant sighed in frustration but said nothing more, recognizing the determination in his voice. The driver reluctantly nodded and parked, while Keanu stepped out into the cold night. The snow had picked up, its quiet fall casting a silvery glow over the market. The festive lights twinkled in defiance of the growing darkness. Keanu moved purposefully through the crowded aisles, his sharp eyes scanning every corner. "Eli?" he called softly, careful not to draw too much attention to himself. The boy's face was etched in his mind, bright with hope one moment, then clouded with fear the next. He couldn't shake the image of Eli being dragged away by the man, a scene that had pierced through his heart like ice. Stopping at a stall adorned with handmade ornaments, Keanu described Eli to the vendor. The woman, busy arranging her wares, paused and shook her head. "Sorry, haven't seen him," she said with a sympathetic frown. "But children like that, well, they're often moved along quickly." Keanu's stomach tightened at the thought. He pressed on, asking other vendors and shoppers, but their responses were the same, vague, hesitant, or indifferent. The weight of helplessness began to creep in, but Keanu pushed it aside. He wouldn't give up. As he turned a corner, his attention was caught by a group of children huddled near a food stand. They were sharing a single cup of hot cocoa, their small hands cupped around it for warmth. One of the boys noticed Keanu approaching and stiffened, his eyes darting toward an alley. The movement was quick, almost imperceptible, but it was enough for Keanu to follow the unspoken lead. The alley was dim, its walls lined with discarded crates and empty boxes. Keanu's boots crunched softly on the frozen ground as he approached. There, leaning against the wall with a wary expression, was Eli. The boy held the basket of cakes close to his chest, as if it were a shield. "Really?" Keanu said gently, stopping a few feet away. The boy flinched but didn't run. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." Eli's eyes flicked toward the alley's entrance, then back to Keanu. "He'll be mad if he finds me talking to you," he whispered, his voice trembling. Keanu crouched down to the boy's level, his expression calm and reassuring. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he promised. "But I need to know, who is he, and why is he making you do this?" Eli hesitated, his small fingers tightening around the basket's handle. He's not my dad," the boy said at last. "He says I owe him, but it's not true. He just makes us sell. Cakes, candies, whatever. If we don't, he gets really mad." Keanu's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "How many of you are there?" Eli glanced away, his expression troubled. "A few. He moves us around a lot. Says we make more money that way." Keanu's heart sank as the pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't just one man exploiting a child. It was something larger, something far more sinister. "Do you know where he takes you?" he asked. Eli shook his head. "He doesn't tell us. But he always comes back here. He says people spend more at Christmas." Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded bill. "Here," he said, handing it to Eli. "Get yourself something warm to eat, and stay close to the market. I'm going to find him." The boy stared at the money, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Why are you helping me?" he asked quietly. Keanu smiled softly. "Because it's Christmas, and because someone should." Before Eli could respond, a harsh voice echoed through the alley. "Eli!" The boy froze, his face paling. Keanu straightened, his presence immediately imposing. From the shadows emerged the man, his face twisted in anger. "What did I tell you about talking to strangers?" he barked, grabbing Eli's arm. Keanu stepped forward, his voice low and firm. "Let him go." The man sneered, tightening his grip. "You think you're gonna play hero, huh? Walk away, movie star. This ain't your business." Matt groaned. As Keanu Reeves watched Eli dragged into the crowd, his sharp eyes soon landed on him, now clutching the hand of an older woman dressed in an oversized coat. Her exaggerated movements and overly sweet demeanor immediately struck Keanu as odd. The way she led Eli through the market felt more like an act than genuine care. Taking a steadying breath, Keanu approached. "Eli," he called, his voice calm yet commanding. The boy turned, his face lighting up briefly before a flicker of fear overtook him. The woman's grip on his hand tightened visibly as she plastered on a saccharine smile. "Oh, hello," she said, her voice dripping with fake cheer. "Can we help you with something?" Keanu kept his gaze steady. "Eli, are you okay?" he asked, ignoring the woman's attempt to block his path. Eli hesitated, his eyes darting to the ground. The woman's smile faltered as Keanu directed his full attention to her. "I'm concerned about him," he said firmly. "I saw him earlier with someone who was aggressive. Who are you?" The woman's demeanor shifted slightly, her sugary tone tinged with irritation. "I'm his aunt," she said, gripping Eli's arm even tighter. "He's been with me all day. Isn't that right, dear?" Keanu crouched to Eli's level, his expression gentle but serious. "Eli, is that true? Is she your aunt?" The boy looked up at Keanu, his lip trembling. For a moment, he was silent. Then, as if drawing strength from Keanu's presence, he shook his head vigorously. "No," he said, his voice trembling. "Help me." The woman's mask cracked, and her grip on Eli turned vice-like. "You little brat," she hissed. But before she could flee, Keanu moved swiftly, stepping between her and the boy. "Let him go," Keanu said, his voice low and firm. The woman glanced around, panic flashing in her eyes as market-goers began to notice the confrontation. With nowhere to run, she finally released Eli and raised her hands in mock surrender. All right, she said, her sugary tone gone. "I'm not his aunt. My name's Meredith. I was hired to make him look more pitiful so people would buy more cakes." Keanu's jaw tightened. Hired by who? Meredith hesitated, looking around nervously. A man. He calls himself Desmond. He controls the kids. Says they owe him, but it's all a scam. I didn't want to do this, but he's dangerous. If I didn't help, he said I'd pay for it. Keanu's mind raced. Where is he now? He demanded. I don't know, Meredith stammered. He moves around, keeps the kids working different spots. Keanu stepped closer, his eyes boring into hers. Then help us stop him. Tell the police what you know. Meredith shook her head vehemently. I can't. If he finds out I talked. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes wide with fear. I have to go. Before Keanu could stop her, Meredith slipped into the crowd and disappeared. Eli clutched Keanu's arm, his small fingers trembling. He's going to come back, the boy whispered. He always does. Keanu knelt beside Eli, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Not this time, he said firmly. We're going to stop him. Just then, a shout rang out across the market. Eli, where are you, you little thief? The voice was unmistakable. Keanu's heart pounded as he turned to see a man storming through the crowd, his face twisted in anger. Desmond. His aggressive strides cut a path through the holiday cheer, his eyes scanning for Eli like a predator hunting its prey. Eli shrank behind Keanu, gripping his coat tightly. That's him, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Desmond spotted them and sneered. Well, well, he said, his voice dripping with malice. What's this? A movie star playing hero? Keanu stood, his presence towering and unyielding. Leave him alone, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. Desmond's sneer deepened. You've got no idea who you're messing with, he said, taking a step closer. This ain't just about one kid. You think you can fix this? Walk away, Hollywood. Keanu didn't budge. You're not taking him, he said, and this ends tonight. The tension between them crackled in the cold air. Desmond's eyes flicked to Eli, then back to Keanu. Suddenly he lunged, his hand outstretched toward the boy. But Keanu was faster. He stepped in front of Eli, blocking Desmond's path. Before the situation could escalate further, the sound of police sirens pierced the night. Desmond froze, his sneer replaced by a look of pure rage. This isn't over, he growled before bolting into the crowd. Keanu turned to Eli, his heart pounding. You're safe now, he said, his voice steady. Eli nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, he whispered. The police arrived moments later, their presence restoring a sense of order to the shaken market. As officers questioned witnesses and began searching for Desmond, Keanu knelt beside Eli once more. We're going to make sure you're okay, he said softly, and we're going to get help for the others. Come. Eli looked up at Keanu, his eyes filled with gratitude. For the first time that night, the boy's fear seemed to fade, replaced by a glimmer of hope. As the police processed the scene, Keanu Reeves stood firm, his gaze steady as he addressed the officers. This isn't just about Desmond, he said, his voice calm but resolute. This man is part of something much larger, a network exploiting children, homeless, vulnerable, and voiceless. There could be more kids out there just like Eli, who need our help. The officers exchanged glances, impressed by Keanu's insight. We'll investigate further, one officer assured him, taking detailed notes. Keanu went on to describe Meredith, the elderly woman who had posed as Eli's guardian earlier. She might just be another victim, or she could be deeper into this than we know, he said. Either way, she's a link in the chain. Eli stood close by, his small hands gripping Keanu's sleeve as the flurry of activity around them grew. Keanu turned his attention to the boy, kneeling to his level. You're safe now, he said softly. But we need to make sure you and your friends are okay. Eli hesitated, then nodded. There are others, he admitted quietly. Desmond moves us around, so people don't notice. Keanu's jaw tightened. He looked up at the officers. We need to get these kids out of this network, and we need to start with Eli. One officer nodded. We'll make arrangements with child services, he said. And we'll need a statement from the boy. Keanu glanced at Eli, seeing the fear flickering in his eyes. Not tonight, Keanu interjected. He's been through enough. Let me take care of him, at least for now. The officer hesitated, but then agreed. "We'll process Desmond and work on the larger case," he said. "But you'll need to stay in touch, Mr. Reeves." "Of course," Keanu replied. As the night stretched on, Keanu coordinated with local authorities and social services, ensuring Eli's safety while offering resources to assist with the broader investigation. Meanwhile, he arranged for immediate medical attention for Eli's friends and began making calls to his network to provide support for the children involved. In the back seat of the limousine, Eli sat close to Keanu, still clutching his small basket of cakes. The boy's exhaustion was evident, but his wide eyes reflected a mix of fear and tentative hope. Keanu handed him a bottle of water and a warm blanket the driver had offered. "Here," he said, wrapping the blanket around the boy's shoulders. "You've been brave tonight. You deserve to rest." Eli looked at him, his lip trembling. "What's going to happen now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Keanu smiled gently. "First, we're going to get you somewhere safe. Then we'll make sure you and your friends are never in danger again." Eli nodded slowly, leaning into Keanu's side as fatigue overtook him. For the first time that night, the boy's eyes closed in peaceful sleep. The limousine pulled up to a modest but well-kept apartment building in a quiet part of the city. Keanu's longtime friend and former co-star, Sarah, stood at the door, bundled in a thick coat and scarf. "Keanu," she said warmly, stepping forward. "I got your message. Everything's ready." "Thank you, Sarah," Keanu replied, his voice heavy with gratitude. "This means more than I can say." He gently woke Eli and guided him inside, where Sarah had prepared a cozy guest room adorned with simple Christmas decorations. A small tree twinkled in the corner, its ornaments handmade. Eli's eyes widened as he took in the warmth of the space. "Is this for me?" he asked, hesitantly. Sarah smiled. "For you and anyone else who needs it," she said, kneeling to his level. "You're safe here." Keanu knelt beside Eli, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Sarah's going to take care of you tonight," he said, "and I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. I promise." Eli bit his lip, then hugged Keanu tightly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Keanu returned the embrace, his heart heavy with the weight of the night's events. As he stepped back, he caught Sarah's eye. "I need to call my lawyer," he said quietly. "We need to make sure Desmond can't come near these kids again." Sarah nodded. "Whatever you need, I'm here to help." As Keanu rode back through the quiet streets of New York, the city's lights reflecting off the freshly fallen snow, his mind churned with thoughts. What had started as a simple Christmas stroll had become something much more profound. He had stepped into the lives of people who had been overlooked, exploited, and discarded by society. And he knew he couldn't walk away now. Pulling out his phone, he dialed his assistant. "Cancel everything for the next week," he said firmly. "I'm staying in New York until this is resolved." "Understood, Mr. Reeves," came the reply, tinged with concern. "But the studio—" "Let them wait," Keanu interrupted. "This is more important." As the limousine wound its way through the sleeping city, Keanu gazed out at the quiet streets. This Christmas had become a turning point, not just for Eli and the other children, but for Keanu himself. He had always believed in using his influence for good, but tonight had reignited that commitment in a deeply personal way. The stars above seemed brighter against the winter sky as he made a silent promise to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, to be a beacon of hope in a world too often consumed by darkness, and to never lose sight of what truly mattered: compassion, action, and the power to change lives. This Christmas, let this story remind us that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life forever. Will you be the reason someone believes in goodness again? If this story touched your heart, don't let it stop here. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of hope and compassion. Like this video, leave a comment about what moved you the most, and subscribe for more stories that prove humanity is capable of incredible things. Together, we can inspire change.